Buenas tardes, bienvenidos a un nuevo Hangout. Esta semana tenemos con nosotros a Porter Erisman, director y productor del documental Crocodile en el Yangtze. Nos va a contar cómo ha sido ese proceso de haber hecho este documental, de haber hecho parte de una compañía como Alibaba y adicionalmente de su gira por Colombia. Nos ha venido acompañando desde la semana pasada cuando celebramos la Semana Global del Emprendimiento por varias ciudades del país y queremos conocer muy de cerca esa experiencia. Como en otras oportunidades, llevaremos esta conversación en inglés y tomamos sus preguntas a través de nuestra cuenta en Twitter, @INNpulsaCol, en Facebook Impulsa Colombia. Y la idea es que tengamos una conversación muy interactiva con ustedes, que no seamos solo nosotros aquí, sino que ustedes hagan parte de esta experiencia. Entonces, voy a comenzar por preguntarle a Porter sobre cuáles han sido las razones que lo llevaron a él a preparar o a hacer este documental. Es un periodista de Vieja Data y adicionalmente ha trabajado en la construcción de esta compañía, de este gigante de Internet. So, Porter, we would like to begin by knowing what took you to creating a documentary like Crocodile in the Yangtze.
Yeah, I had worked inside Alibaba Group for 8 years, and I saw the company grow from a small apartment into a global company now with about 25,000 people. And for me, it was a really great learning experience and a very inspiring experience because I saw a group of ordinary people led by a former English teacher who built China's first global internet company and managed to battle and beat eBay in China along the way. And so for me, after having gone through that experience, I wanted to first share the story with people so that they could see if they're setting out on their own dream or in their own startup business, the ups and downs to be prepared for so that they could hopefully achieve a similar result.
And what took you to being part of Alibaba? How was that decision made?
Well, I was already in China, and I was working at an advertising and PR company in Beijing. And at that time, I was helping foreign internet companies come into China. So Yahoo was one of my clients, and we helped Yahoo come into the China market. But I always wanted to join a startup, and that's one of the reasons I went to China in the first place, is to be a part of a startup. So a friend told me that there was a company started by an English teacher, maybe a little bit crazy or unique, but he had a dream of building a global company based in China. So I thought it might be fun to be based in China and helping companies go global rather than helping global companies come into China. So I went to Shanghai, I met with Jack, I saw his team at a customer event, and I decided it was an adventure I really wanted to try.
It's almost impossible to think how China didn't have an internet company before Alibaba. So how was that scenario? Why, or how was it the first company? Like, you can't even think of that today.
Yeah, actually, so Alibaba was started in 1999, and then there were about 10 million internet users in China. Alibaba wasn't the first, but actually Jack Ma, the guy who started Alibaba, did start the first internet company in China in 1995. So his first attempt, it was called China Pages. It was meant to be a sort of yellow pages for Chinese companies trying to find buyers overseas. And in 1995, when he went to register it, people didn't even know what to register it as because the government hadn't even heard of an internet company. So in 1999, he started again. And at that time, there were some portal companies, Sina, Sohu, NetEase, some really well-known Chinese portal companies. So it wasn't the first then, but it was the first global one from China, the first company that actually had a global vision to create a marketplace serving people all around the world. And yeah, at the time it seemed crazy, and most people thought the Western or the U.S. internet companies would come and dominate the China market, but the way it worked out actually changed a lot of people's perceptions.
Let me tell our audience what we've been discussing. Entonces, una de las razones que nos cuenta Porter por las cuales él decidió hacer este documental radica en que él hizo parte de Alibaba, hizo parte de esta compañía durante aproximadamente 8 años. Él se encontraba trabajando en mercadeo y en relaciones públicas en China y tuvo la oportunidad de conocer a este profesor de inglés que fue quien lideró la construcción de Alibaba. Le pareció una persona absolutamente inspiradora y pensó en que había un grupo de personas ordinarias haciendo algo realmente extraordinario. Alibaba se constituye en la primera compañía global de Internet. No fue la primera compañía fundada en China de Internet, pero ese mismo fundador ya había creado anteriormente una compañía que se llamó Páginas Chinas, en donde tenía un intento por empezar a buscar mercado fuera de China. Y en algún punto Porter pensó en por qué no ayudar a una compañía desde China a crecer globalmente en vez de estar trayendo a un gigante global a competir en China. Y le pareció un desafío bastante interesante para ser parte de él, entre otras cosas, pues para lograr lo que ya alcanzaron, que es que una compañía en China estuviese sirviendo el mercado global. So, tell us a little bit about that experience of creating that company. At which point did you enter Alibaba, and how was the building and the scaling of that dream?
Sure. So I joined the company in 2000, and at that point, the company had, um, when I interviewed with the company, they were still in an apartment. There were about 40 people or more working inside Jack Ma's apartment. By the time I joined, about a month later, they had about 130 employees and were growing really quickly, and they just moved out of the apartment. And so the experience, I would say, is the company had a lot of ups and downs because it's easy to have a company with a group of founders in an apartment. But to take that and keep the culture and grow to 25,000 employees is really tough. And so I joined right before the internet bubble burst. Um, and so we went through a lot of tough times trying to grow the company while saving costs as the internet bubble had burst and most people gave up on the internet.
Recap on those factors that were key for the successful growth of a company that you guys brought from an apartment and 40 to 50 people to actually a company, a global company of 25,000 people.
Right, sure. So the after Alibaba's initial growth phase, where there was a lot of chaos and a lot of problems because we didn't have a very good structure, we decided we sort of had to lay off a lot of people. Unfortunately, we brought the operations back to a more reasonable level, and we started again. And the second time we started to grow, we were lucky because we had just hired a person who had worked at GE for a long time, and he had a lot of really good management experience in building systems and processes. And so the things we did were we wrote down first our mission, vision, and values. A lot of companies, you know it intuitively, but sometimes until you write it down, it's hard for everyone to really know what it is you're pursuing. And then the key thing was to keep the company culture as we grew. We came up with 9 values that we felt were important for everyone to follow while they're working at Alibaba. Some examples are teamwork, teach and learn, embrace change, openness, integrity. And more than just writing these on a coffee mug and just putting them out there, we made it a part of everyone's performance review. So, for example, every quarter we had goals and targets. And some of it was based on performance, some of it was based on values. And then at the end of the quarter, your bonus and your review was based on 50% of your performance and 50% value. So for example, let's say you're the top salesperson, but you didn't have the sort of integrity as a salesperson in dealing with the customer, or you didn't embrace change when the company asked you to sort of move in a new direction or adapt to a new product. And so basically at the end of each quarter you would get measured on your values and then on your performance, and that's what your bonus was based on. So it made clear to everyone that these are not just values that are kind of written that we hope you follow, that these are things we incentivize you to do to make a stronger team. And that system helped the company grow from about 150 people when I joined to 25,000 people now.
Yeah, that's very important, and I would like to share this with everyone. Entonces, lo que ellos hicieron fue pasar de un estado, además, donde la compañía estaba como en un lugar muy caótico, no había procesos, a veces llegaba la gente y no sabía cuál era su jefe o cuál era su tarea. Obviamente ese crecimiento tan rápido pues representó todos estos desafíos. Entonces lo que hicieron fue hacer una revisión de lo que ellos querían como compañía y establecieron la misión, la visión y sobre todo los valores con los que querían que las personas trabajaran en esa compañía. Y a veces es importante tenerlos escritos, nos dice Porter, tener esos valores y poderlos recordar porque de manera intuitiva algunas personas los conocían, especialmente los que estaban en el equipo directivo, pero no necesariamente eso permea a todas las personas de la compañía. Así que decidieron escribirlos y no solamente se quedaron escritos, sino que los hicieron parte de la evaluación de desempeño de quienes trabajaban en Alibaba. Es decir, cada trimestre o cada corte periódico, lo que ellos hacían es que no solamente evaluaban cómo las personas habían alcanzado sus resultados, sino que evaluaban también contra los valores, sobre cómo estaban viviendo los valores. Y esto iba desde trabajo en equipo hasta la capacidad de aceptar y aprovechar el cambio, la apertura y todos estos valores pues buscaban que la gente entendiera que no solamente esperaban eso de ellos, sino que realmente había unos incentivos para lograrlo. Fue de esa manera como desde que él llegó, que había 150 personas, lograron escalar a una compañía de aproximadamente 25,000 personas. So tell us about the figure that Jack Ma was in Alibaba. What was his role in the company, and how was the possibility of people to be in contact with him?
Yeah, I found him to be a very open person to work with. I think he had a lot of experience meeting people from all around the world when he was a kid in his hometown, and so he had a lot of sort of international ideas, and that led to a pretty open management system. So the thing that Jack Ma did, which I think was really successful, was he took a group of ordinary average people who didn't have any business experience, and he got them to work really well as a team. And he got the innovation to come really from the ground up. A lot of companies, the boss likes to be in charge of everything and sort of order everything from the top down. But especially in the internet industry where every day you need to innovate new things, he created an environment where ideas could come up from all levels in the company. And he helped this team of really ordinary people work together well. So sometimes I think of it as like a football team. There are some football teams that have stars and all-stars, some football teams that have no famous people, but every now and then those teams win the World Cup because they work together really well as a team, more than having any one person excel as a superstar.
Bueno, entonces le estamos preguntando a Porter sobre Jack Ma como emprendedor y sobre esa figura pues que ejercía un rol muy importante para los empleados de Alibaba. Lo que nos dice es que él tenía una postura muy abierta a la gente que trabajaba en la compañía y pues nos está contando sobre cómo ellos crearon un entorno en donde se valoraban las ideas de cualquier persona al interior de la compañía. De hecho, lograron que ideas pudiesen venir desde abajo de cualquier nivel, no importaba cuál, pero lo que se entendió es que la innovación podía estar adentro de la compañía, no necesariamente tenía que venir de afuera o de un cargo directivo o de una estructura jerárquica, sino que finalmente lo que logró, el gran logro que reconoce Porter de Jack Ma es el poder liderar un equipo, construir un equipo de personas ordinarias alrededor de una gran tarea. Entonces nos pone el ejemplo de un equipo de fútbol y es como a veces uno tiene equipos de fútbol en donde hay grandes superestrellas y gana un equipo porque tiene grandes superestrellas o simplemente tiene personas que son muy buenas y logra ensamblarlas en un buen equipo para que tengan un buen resultado. Porter, I would like you to tell us a bit about that decision that you make into the documentary. Why did you decide to tell this story? Why did you think it was something that was worth sharing with the world?
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. This story actually started as a book. So I was going to write a book about my experience. But then when I realized how much video was available and how much of the company's experience had been captured by people inside the company and also sources outside the company, I decided instead to turn it into a film. And my main motivation, my main driver was to inspire entrepreneurs. I think any entrepreneur who has had some success, they have a responsibility to share it with other people, because entrepreneurship some business can be a rational thing, but actually entrepreneurship is a very emotional thing. So I wanted to capture those emotions of the ups and downs and hopefully inspire entrepreneurs so that if they're starting out, they can see the path that Alibaba had, and then they can be prepared for all the ups and downs and see a long-term way to persist and then achieve what they're chasing.
Entonces le preguntamos a Porter sobre por qué decidió contar esta historia, por qué hacer un documental. Y dice que él primero pensó hacer un libro y cuando se dio cuenta de que tenían material audiovisual importante disponible, decidió hacer un documental. Y la principal razón es porque él quería inspirar alrededor del emprendimiento a el mundo. Dice que el proceso del emprendimiento pues tiene unas dificultades y quería también que otros emprendedores pudiesen estar preparados para los altos y bajos que se presentan en el camino y cómo podría contar esa experiencia de Alibaba, cómo lo habían hecho, cómo habían transitado por ese camino. Um, and what do you think was the most difficult moment for Alibaba on that time while you were there?
Yeah, I think the most difficult time was in about 2001. The internet bubble had burst. Most people, the media and the critics, were saying that Alibaba would be a failure. They said it was running out of money. And then we had just laid off a number of people. So there was a time when we were wondering, would the company survive? And because we were shrinking in size rather than growing. And that was a time, too, where I talk about in the film that Jack Ma, the founder, he even called me on the phone, and I was really surprised. He asked me if I thought he was a good person, and was he just a bad person because he just laid off all these people. So even he's a guy who, that was the only time I saw his confidence shaken, but that was a time where even the CEO and founder was wondering if he could go on and continue, because he was just an English teacher and never expected he'd be running a big company. So that was definitely the toughest time. But I think a lot of startups go through that, and that's why I talk about it in the film, of the emotional downs. You need to be prepared for it, because most great companies have gone through similar periods.
Bueno, y entonces sobre el momento más difícil le estamos preguntando a Porter en Alibaba y nos dice que quizás fue en el 2001, cuando recién había pasado la gran burbuja de Internet en el mundo y había mucha duda y desconfianza sobre lo que podía pasar con Alibaba, incluso de los críticos o principalmente de los críticos, pero eso llegó a permear la empresa y hasta Jack Ma, el fundador, pensaba si él iba a ser posible, si iba a ser posible para él continuar con esta empresa. Él consideraba que era simplemente un profesor de inglés y que cómo iba a ser el gran gerente de esta empresa tan enorme que estaban buscando creer. Entonces nos dice que las compañías con alto potencial de crecimiento en esas etapas tan jóvenes pasan todas por muchos de esos momentos. Él logró ver cuando Jack Ma se lo preguntó a sí mismo, que incluso alguna vez lo llamó y le dijo: soy una buena persona, y esto es parte de la historia que él cuenta en el documental, ese lado humano que hace parte como de la constitución de este gran gigante del comercio en el mundo. Otra cosa que nos dice Porter en esta experiencia es que era un momento muy difícil porque en vez de estar creciendo se estaban encogiendo. Parte de lo que nos ha contado es que durante una época lograron mover personal a Estados Unidos y tenían gente trabajando en China, pero tenían otro grupo en Estados Unidos. Y en medio de la crisis lo que tuvieron que hacer fue cerrar en Estados Unidos, traer toda la operación a China y a partir de ahí seguir funcionando. Entonces eso representó un valor o un costo pues muy grande como para la compañía en términos de creer si podían o no seguir. So what do you think was the key factor for people to keep believing in this thing as possible, both for the founder but also for the people who were already part of this?
Yeah, I think the main thing was at this time in 2001, when the internet industry was in this bubble phase, it had just burst. There was a lot of noise and a lot of critics of different companies, including Alibaba. The number one thing we did that allowed us to succeed that other companies didn't do is, instead of chasing the media and the investors and the analysts and the critics, we really just focused on what does the customer really, really want. And in the internet, you got to listen to your customer because you get immediate response. And our customers were telling us they wanted something very different from what the media were saying an internet company should be. And so a leader and an innovator just really listens to the customer, understands what is the problem they're trying to solve, and then focuses on that. And so what kept us going is we saw that our website was still growing. and the customers were still using the site even though we weren't making money. So we just kept growing, and we decided if we can be the last man standing and survive the internet winter, then we could have a really good future. But we had to cut costs and save, and then we had this goal that we wrote down, be the last man standing. And sure enough, all of our competitors slowly died off because they were chasing, I think, a lot of the wrong goals, trying to make Wall Street happy, but not trying to make the customers happy. And then finally, after the winter, a sort of spring came for Alibaba where we were able to grow and make a profit again.
Bueno, entonces nos está compartiendo unas lecciones, Porter, también sobre cómo fue para la compañía esa transición. Y nos dice que en medio de la burbuja, lo que ellos decidieron fue enfocarse en el cliente y entender que tenían que escucharlo. En el mundo de Internet hay una gran ventaja, y es que uno tiene retroalimentación constante y en tiempo real de lo que los clientes quieren. Y mientras que los críticos y los medios estaban diciendo millones de cosas, pues ellos se dedicaron a escuchar a sus clientes. Hicieron muchos sacrificios, hicieron recortes en donde creían que tenían que hacerlos, y se enfocaron en escuchar al cliente para proveerle lo que ellos necesitaban. Y eso no fue fácil siempre, porque mientras que otras compañías estaban dedicadas a hacer que Wall Street estuviese feliz, ellos se enfocaron solamente en hacer el cliente feliz. Entonces nos cuenta de esa experiencia sobre cómo su decisión fue ser el último hombre como en esa línea de batalla, poder estar ahí al final de la batalla, y se enfocaron en eso, en estar escuchando a los clientes para llegar a ese objetivo y esperar a que los otros competidores fuesen desapareciendo de la escena. Efectivamente así fue luego de un tiempo. Do you think that the ecosystem in which this company grew played a vital role, or what was it like creating that company in a place where maybe that type of company hadn't been created before?
Yeah, well, it's interesting. While I've been in Colombia, the questions people ask me are the same questions that people would ask in China when we started Alibaba and Taobao. So the environment for us when we were getting started was China didn't have a very good logistics system. China didn't have payment systems. People didn't really use credit cards very much. And then a big one, and I've noticed this in Colombia, some people will say, oh, e-commerce might never work in Colombia right now because people don't trust each other to buy from like a stranger. And those are the exact same sort of issues that people brought up back when Alibaba and Taobao started. And so what I've been saying, and as I go around Colombia, is that the environment, if it's inefficient and it has problems, well, that's the opportunity for entrepreneurs. So entrepreneurs shouldn't complain about problems, they should solve the problems. And that's exactly what we did, is we went and we came up with systems to solve these problems for e-commerce. So one example is just that for the payment, for people to send money to a stranger, we had to develop a way for people to take that lack of trust out of the equation. And so with Alipay, the payment system, we made it an escrow-based system. So eBay in the US works where through PayPal you just send money to someone and that's it. But with Alipay, we made it that the buyer would send the money to Alibaba, and Alibaba would hold it and keep it secure. The seller would send the product to the buyer, and then once the buyer decided that this was something that, yes, he or she wanted and expected, then the money would be forwarded to the seller. So this was a creative, innovative way to resolve the trust issue. And that's why I think in Colombia, all of the things that people have told me where they feel e-commerce is sort of growing at a slower rate, it'll just take one entrepreneur or a team of entrepreneurs to solve those problems. And in Colombia, you'll see the e-commerce will really take off.
Pues entonces nos está diciendo Porter que le sorprende que las preguntas que le hacemos en Colombia se parecen tanto a las que le pueden hacer en China, y significa que tenemos unos desafíos que superar, pero que son globales. Entonces nos dice, por ejemplo, que en China ellos enfrentaron el problema que la gente no tenía confianza para hacer comercio electrónico. Y ese es un tema que ha surgido mucho en Colombia en las charlas que él ha tenido. Y lo que dice es que hay muchos problemas en el mercado, hay muchos problemas en un ecosistema o en un entorno, pero que el trabajo de los emprendedores no es quejarse de esos problemas, sino precisamente resolverlos. Y por eso parte de lo que ellos hicieron en Alibaba fue, frente a la desconfianza que tenían los usuarios, crear una solución que fuese bastante innovadora y creativa para desintermediar o para lograr pues como asegurar que la gente quisiese hacer un pago en línea. Entonces, mientras que por ejemplo en un sistema como en Estados Unidos PayPal funciona en una forma en la que el que compra le envía directamente el dinero a quien le está vendiendo, ellos hicieron como una triangulación para que el comprador le enviara a Alipay, de una de las compañías o el sistema de pagos de Alibaba, el dinero lo recaudaba mientras que el vendedor le enviaba al comprador el objeto pues que había comprado, y luego ellos liberaban el dinero al vendedor. De esa manera no tenía la gente que enviar a un extraño o a un desconocido la plata. Entonces se trata simplemente de buscar soluciones frente a un problema que existe en el mercado, y lo que él cree es que seguramente en un mercado como el colombiano, con ese tipo de soluciones, podemos hacer que el comercio electrónico empiece a crecer a unas tasas mucho más aceleradas. Um, you uh, you have shared in the documentary many moments throughout Alibaba in which Jack Ma played a very important role in inspiring people. Do you think an entrepreneur needs to be like an inspirer of those who are working with him or her on that endeavor?
I think it depends. I think some, every entrepreneur is different, and some people, if they watch the film, they'll see that Jack Ma is a really unique guy and maybe has a kind of a special leadership quality to inspire people even more than most entrepreneurs. And so, one of the things I try to tell people from my experience is that an entrepreneur, the thing that Jack Ma did is he was just himself. And an entrepreneur shouldn't try to be Jack Ma or try to be Steve Jobs. The number one thing they should do is be themselves. And so even when some CEOs, I feel like when you see them talk, other people might believe what they say, but you feel like maybe they don't believe it themselves. But Jack Ma was a guy that other people didn't believe what he was saying a lot of the time, but he believed it himself. And so I think an entrepreneur, the best thing they can do is be themselves. And but the next thing is, Jack would always tell people, he wouldn't try to get people to follow him. He would set the goal and point it out on the horizon, and we would all agree on the goal, and then we would all chase the goal. So a company can have a problem when it's just chasing a leader, trying to make the leader happy. But instead, a good leader will find a goal that appeals to people. Maybe it's an inspiring goal that you're going to help change society, not just create a business, but actually help change society. So in that way, I think it's good. I think he was effective, is that he chose goals that appealed to people on an inspiring level, and then had people chase those goals, and he was always himself. In the business world, a lot of people, they put on a business hat, and they act like a businessman during the day, and then they have their personal life. But I think what made him good and other leaders good is they're just themselves and speak from the heart, and that's what was inspiring about him.
Bueno, entonces le hemos preguntado a Porter sobre la figura que es Jack Ma para sus empresarios o para las personas que trabajaban con él en esta compañía. Y nos dice que finalmente él es una persona única, como cada uno de nosotros lo es, y que un emprendedor nunca debería tratar de ser alguien más, no debería tratar de ser Steve Jobs ni Jack Ma, sino simplemente de encontrar esa identidad propia y poderla llevar. En el caso de Jack Ma, pues era muy inspirador por la persona que él era, y eso pudo trasladarlo a la compañía. Pero se trata precisamente de lograr reunir a las personas alrededor de un propósito. En el caso de Jack Ma, finalmente no se trataba de que la gente estuviese trabajando para hacerlo feliz a él, sino que era muy bueno en lograr articular un objetivo, trazar ese objetivo, ponerlo en el horizonte y hacer que todos fueran hacia allá. Entonces esa es la razón por la que él era tan inspirador, pero se trata precisamente de que cada emprendedor pueda encontrar en dónde están sus fortalezas y ser él mismo. How has your experience of being in Colombia been? Tell us about this journey that you have undertaken with us throughout different cities.
Yeah, it's actually this has been my favorite. I've shown the film in about 15 different countries. This has been my favorite trip actually so far, and for me it's been amazing because I've been able to visit Barranquilla, Bucaramanga, Medellin, Bogota. I'll be showing the film, and Ibagué, and I probably said all the names wrong, but close enough. Um, but to me, the thing that has been great is I really feel Colombia really is a country of entrepreneurs. Some people don't even realize they're an entrepreneur. They might be out on the street with a small shop or selling something, but I think it's a country of entrepreneurs, a lot of small and medium-sized businesses. Of course, it has big businesses too. But what I've felt in different cities is the entrepreneurs I've met have that same spirit. Um, and of course, I have to say, working with the iNNpulsa team has been great too because they've been really passionate about the same goals I have, which is to help entrepreneurs. Um, so the one thing, I think one of my messages here as I go around Colombia is that entrepreneurs in Colombia should not overestimate the competitors from bigger countries or shouldn't underestimate themselves. That the same experience that Alibaba had could be also here in Colombia, and that entrepreneurs here they can build businesses for all of Latin America. They can build businesses for the whole world. No one ever expected that what's now the world's largest e-commerce company in terms of sales, no one expected it would be from a smaller town in China. So I think in Colombia, entrepreneurs should think big. They shouldn't worry about all the problems because even China had a complicated history it was coming out of. And now could be a golden era for entrepreneurs. And I feel that as I go and talk to different entrepreneurs in different cities.
Bueno, entonces estamos preguntando a Porter sobre cómo ha sido esta gira por Colombia, en donde ya nos acompañaban varias ciudades y ya ustedes lo escucharon nombrar cuáles de esas. Dice que ha mostrado este documental en ya más de 15 países en giras que ha hecho y que esta ha sido definitivamente su favorita. Ha tenido la oportunidad de estar en Barranquilla, en Bucaramanga, en Ibagué. Esta semana lo vamos a presentar aquí en Bogotá en el día de mañana. Y lo que nos dice Porter es que encuentra un valor muy importante en esas conversaciones que ha tenido con los emprendedores. En Colombia entonces él ve que hay empresarios de diferentes niveles y en diferentes tamaños, pero que finalmente aquí nosotros tenemos la capacidad, y él lo ha visto ya a través de esos empresarios con mentalidad emprendedora, de crear esos negocios para el mundo, que nosotros estamos aquí en perfecta capacidad de hacer negocios para el mercado de América Latina o incluso para el mundo, pero que parte de lo que tenemos que hacer es dejar de sobreestimar tanto lo que sucede en el resto del mundo y quizás de subestimarnos tanto a nosotros mismos, que ahí tenemos todavía una tarea por hacer. Ah, hecho una felicitación al equipo de Impulsa que quiero extender, pues porque son quienes han estado detrás de todo este trabajo que ha sucedido en la Semana Global del Emprendimiento, quienes lo han acompañado y con quienes él dice comparte una filosofía de querer ayudar a los emprendedores y que esa es quizás la razón por la que tanto se ha motivado. So I don't know, Porter, if you want to leave us with any other thoughts or any other stories around Alibaba, the documentary, or even this experience in Colombia.
Yeah, actually, I do have one thing that now that I've had about 2 weeks here in Colombia, that I think is really essential for Colombia to realize is that e-commerce, by creating a great e-commerce environment, it's really the best way to empower entrepreneurs. And yesterday I did some research just to see what the state of e-commerce is in Colombia, and the statistic I read was that maybe last year there were about $2 billion worth of sales in e-commerce in Colombia. I don't know how accurate that was, but that's what it said. And it said that in 2016 they're expecting about $5 billion sales. Well, to give you some reference from the experience in China about 2 weeks ago, in one day there was $5 billion US dollars of sales in just one day. And 10 years ago in China, people were saying that e-commerce will never work. So Colombia could have the same experience. And what we saw in China was that from the countryside villages where people didn't have jobs, they actually started to build entire e-commerce villages where everyone in the village had a shop, and it employed people, and it solved like unemployment issues of people in the countryside because people who didn't have jobs could help deliver packages. So now in China, people are buying groceries online. They're shopping for everything online, and it's absorbed a lot of the unemployed people, and it's really lifting the economy at a grassroots level. And so I feel in Colombia, it just needs some entrepreneurs with that spark to build something that really sets off e-commerce in Colombia. One of the things we did was travel around from city to city in China and educate people. How do you build an online store? How do you use e-commerce? How do you trust people that you haven't met? What are the things to do? And I think that someone or some company with that same vision, similar to what you see in Alibaba, if they brought that to Colombia, you would see that it would create this ecosystem of entrepreneurship throughout the country. If I spoke Spanish, I would come and do it. But hopefully someone watching this or someone who's seen the film will walk away and realize what a great source. It's not just, people say in the U.S., e-commerce is what Jack Ma would say. In the U.S., e-commerce is a dessert, but in China is the main course. Like e-commerce in the U.S. just helps the economy a little bit more, but in developing countries, it's actually the main course. It can create a whole ecosystem. So if I were to walk away with any message is, sure, people might be inspired by Jack Ma Alibaba's story, but if they look at the big picture and how the company has affected China, if you bring that same spirit to Colombian e-commerce, I think it would be a really great thing that would help empower entrepreneurs.
Bueno, nos deja Porter entonces al final de esta conversación con una reflexión muy interesante alrededor del comercio electrónico. Entonces nos dice que incluso ha estado haciendo la tarea de mirar o de investigar cómo estamos nosotros en Colombia en este aspecto, y nos dice que parte de lo que sucedió en China es que hace 10 años nadie creía que iba a ser posible que el comercio electrónico funcionara, que la gente lo utilizara como herramienta. Y tan solo la semana pasada, en un día, se vendieron 2 billones de dólares a través de comercio electrónico en China. Entonces lo que nos dice Jack Ma es que si él tuviese, perdón, lo que nos dice Porter es que si él tuviese que irse con un solo mensaje es cómo podemos nosotros fortalecer ese ecosistema del comercio electrónico. Y ahí hay enormes cosas por hacer. Ellos, por ejemplo, lo que hicieron fue ir a pequeñas villas en toda China para que gente que quizás no estaba pudiendo vender sus productos, o personas que estaban con un nivel de desempleo, o ciudades, incluso pueblos que estaban con niveles de desempleo muy altos, pudiesen empezar a encontrar en el comercio electrónico una vía para el desarrollo. Y eso finalmente lo que ha hecho es que lleve mayor prosperidad a muchas de estas regiones, y la idea es cómo podemos nosotros hacer eso en Colombia. Finalmente han tenido que empezar a confiar, empezar a unirse quizás proveedores locales alrededor de esa tarea. Y lo que dice Porter es que ahí hay una gran oportunidad, y que él quisiera ver no solamente personas que se inspiren por esta historia, por la historia de Jack Ma o por el documental, sino personas que estén dispuestas a asumir este desafío, que si él hablara español quizás iría como a hacer esta tarea de evangelizar sobre comercio electrónico, pero que espera que alguno de los emprendedores que está viendo esta conversación tome la decisión de ir a hacerlo, porque es una forma de generar riqueza y de traer un mayor bienestar a la sociedad. Hay una gran oportunidad, no solamente para absorber desempleo, sino para que la economía pueda crecer. So Porter, I really want to thank you for having been with us this week, especially because for us the Global Entrepreneurship Week was a good opportunity to make visible an issue that sometimes is not part of our daily lives. And with this story, I believe that you have inspired already many Colombians. So thank you for having been here.
Great, thanks. It's been one of my best experiences with the film, and an honor. So thank you to iNNpulsa and all the different entrepreneurs I've met.